growing up sucks duck dick, but shit, it beats leaving your husband for some dumb hick that makes you come quick. And even though memories made may be manufactured, what I am after is not some profound proof that people plagiarize their own happiness. Actually, it's that rose-shattered shades are not something I'm proud of, but the truth of the matter is that we all have nostalgia, a sentimental longing or wistful affection for the past, typically a period or place with happy personal association. Within my lifetime, I've seen many a discussion about the role nostalgia plays in the media we consume and how it affects what we consider good content. I'm kidding. Seriously though, as much as we try to escape it, nostalgia is ever present in our brains. Like an adrenaline junkie walking on top of a 100-story building with no safety gear on, or a person with a death wish walking on top of a 100-story building with no safety gear on, nostalgia is right there screaming at us, and try as we might, we cannot ignore it. Now, I'm not standing up here on my soapbox to say that I'm better than anyone, or to say that being nostalgic is bad, or to act as if I don't let nostalgia cloud my judgment, because I do. For example, debatably my favorite video game of all time is Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door. Released just a few days before my 7th birthday, TTYD is a turn-based RPG starring Mario in a new place that's really FUT. Even though I can, and eventually will, talk about why this game is amazing for hours on end, I would be remiss not to step outside of myself for a few seconds and recognize my own nostalgic tunnel vision. TTYD is the sequel to my very favorite N64 game, Paper Mario 64. Not only did I play both these games when I was super young, but I'm also pretty sure they're the only two games my dad and I ever bonded over. He wasn't really into video games, still isn't, but we played 64 a ton when I was super little, and when TTYD came out, it was without question the next chapter on our little adventure. Probably the best memory I have with my dad growing up is one night when I came home from school and we just played Thousand-Year Door. We literally just sat and laughed and fought X-Nauts for hours and hours until he eventually looked at the clock and saw it was like 2 or 3 in the morning or some shit. We used to argue a lot. My dad was pretty serious about me getting my work done, but when he realized what time it was and asked if I had homework, and I told him yes, and it didn't get done, obviously, because of everything we had been doing, he didn't yell. He just laughed and smiled a little bit and said it was his fault, and he wrote me a note to take to my teacher that said I didn't do my homework because we played video games all night. I mean, Jesus Christ, we got matching tattoos of the Star Spirits from Paper Mario 64, and if you're curious, we picked them over the Crystal Stars because they look cooler. But saying all that out loud, I'm sure you can see my point. Is TTYD maybe my favorite video game of all time because it's a perfect masterpiece, or do my rose-colored glasses make all the red flags just look like flags? Welcome to the debate of nostalgia versus objectivity. Do we owe it to ourselves to speak honestly about the things that we love, or is it completely reasonable to let our opinions be clouded by feelings? Should we be Ben Shapiro or the SJWs? I would argue that a healthy mix of both leads to the greatest positive impact on content creation, be it video games, movies, TV shows, what have you. I can adore TTYD and long for more games in its style while simultaneously picking apart its faults. Like the ridiculous backtracking and the absolutely horrid backtracking, and did I mention it has too much fucking backtracking? But conversely, nostalgia can cause a person to not truly be objective in the opposite direction. Wanderlust, a movie nobody saw but me and, well, actually my dad, again, is a perfect example. Paul Rudd and Jennifer Aniston leave their homes in New York to go see Paul Rudd's brother, but instead join a cult. You might be thinking, Bae, why did you see this movie? Did your dad think it'd be funny? Did you guys like the commercials? Did you like the premise? No. We watched this movie because I was 15 and I saw an ad for it where Jordan Peele said that it had an insane amount of nudity and I wanted to see that. So I told my dad that I thought this movie looked hilarious as an excuse to go see a bunch of boobs. Turns out almost all of the nudity is really old people or just dudes hanging dong. And don't get me wrong, I like dong as much as the next not straight gender non-conforming person, but can you imagine how embarrassed I felt? For years I've told people it's one of the worst movies I've ever seen, but when I think about it, that was just my negative nostalgia. I haven't seen that movie since, but I have to recognize that I'm not thinking about it objectively. It's probably a pretty boring run-of-the-mill rom-com that just came and went. In retrospect, it can't be as offensively bad as I've sworn it was for the last 8 years. Also, in the process of writing this video, I found out that Trisha Paytas was in it, so that's fucking grody. Now, like I said, I think we need a healthy amount of both nostalgia and objectivity to make our points actually matter and not sound either obsession-based or just plain malicious. For example, Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Look, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make it all about video games, it's just the thing that comes to my brain naturally because I love video games, I'm sorry. To step away from my own personal bias and more into the fold of general general public discourse, there is a huge section of the Super Smash Bros. Community that vehemently hate Brawl. Oh, you don't believe me? Well, may I introduce you to the competitive Melee community? I touched on this in my gatekeeping video a few months back, but nostalgia does really play a part in all of it. Because even if Brawl isn't as good of a competitive game as Melee is, which it's not, I often feel as if the opinions people have on both games are very inflated. After 20 years, it feels like the hype and love for Melee and the disgust and hatred for Brawl are both way more than anywhere near reasonable, because the negative nostalgia of one and the positive nostalgia of the other fed into each other. Look, y'all, I love Brawl and Melee, but to act like either of them is the best or worst Smash game is fucking ridiculous. Ultimate is the best because, come on, how could it not be? And 4 3DS is the worst because, come on, how could it not be? Looking at these games objectively doesn't seem to be in the cards anytime soon, and as long as GameCube controllers still exist, people will defend Melee to their dying breath. And while I respect it, I don't see how anyone could reasonably see any of these games as the best other than Ultimate. The sheer number of characters and how fun they all are to play, the crazy amount of stages, the seemingly impossible amount of music, and speaking of music, let's talk about M&Ms. No, not these M&Ms. I mean the rapper Eminem, Marshall Mathers Eminem, and from here on out you can call me Dean Kamen because I just made a segue. Growing up, my parents had rules, and like a little kid with a Kit Kat bar and a sweet tooth, you know I had to break them. Which led me listening to music that I wasn't really supposed to listen to. Stuff that was a little harder than they would have liked. From the Slim Shady LP all the way up to the Marshall Mathers LP2, I was a huge Eminem fan. I'm talking posters, CDs, limited edition merch that got stolen from me in my high school French class, books, I had all of it. I knew all the words to so many Eminem songs, I tried to get other people to listen to them. I even at one point watched 8 Mile once a week, every week for like a year straight. I was obsessed. But within the last few years, I've stopped listening to Slim almost completely. And it's hard because I have all of this nostalgia. His records kept me going through some of my hardest times. He taught me that being good with words could be cool. Gave me someone to connect to when I got bullied or I had issues with my biological father. But as I got older, I started hearing some of the words differently. Like some of the lyrics to his song Any Man off Raucous Sound Bombing 2, which is my favorite Eminem song. I'm ice grilling you, staring you down with a gremlin grim. I'm Eminem, you're a at a women's gym. Or I'll strike you with a still pose and hit you with some ill flows that don't even make sense, like ducks using dildos. Those are two super mild examples of how a lot of his lyrics just started to hit me in a way that made me very uncomfortable. And eventually, I had to stand back and start re-examining all of the words. I had to look at it objectively. Things I used to toss away as artistic expressions started to look fucking awful in this new lens I was viewing them with. Talking about violence towards women, hating gay people, straight up, I mean, to be completely frank with you, it's fucking disgusting. I fucking hate that for years of my life, I connected my entire personality to these lyrics. How the fuck can I support someone who talks about stuff like this? But I do believe in artistic freedom, and I'm pretty much 100% against censorship. I want to be able to sweep it under the rug and say, this is okay, he's not actually doing any of it, so it's not that big a deal. My nostalgia makes me want to let those red flags disappear once again. But I think doing so would be a disservice to myself. I owe it to who I am as a person to allow myself to grow up and change and adapt and recognize that things that I used to like are bad, and that they cause shitty behavior, and that they have messages that I cannot stand behind, and I need to learn to be okay with that. I'm not saying I'll never listen to Eminem ever again. It's just not feasible. I don't have the strength to never, ever jump back into such a huge part of my childhood. But I can say that I will severely limit my consumption. I've only listened to Eminem like twice in the last year, for example, because I don't stand for the things that he talks about. And when I take away my nostalgia, when I view it objectively, I can't sign off. I think Eminem and anyone else has the right to make their art however they want to make it, and I don't think that it's anyone else's place to stop them from expressing themselves in whatever way they want to, but that doesn't mean I have to support it, because I cannot, in good faith, participate in that. Now I want to talk about something less dramatic, but just as serious. Ocarina of Time sucks, and we all know it. On my list of N64 games I owned as a kid, if I had to rank them from best to worst, OOT would be somewhere near the bottom, probably between Rugrats in Paris and Rugrats Treasure Hunt, and also, joke's on you, I liked Rugrats in Paris. Playing OOT as a kid, I could not understand why people liked it so much. It wasn't fun to move around, the battle system was boring and repetitive, the story was whatever, Navi wouldn't shut the fuck up, but I wanted to love this game, you know? So, years later, when they re-released it on the 3DS, I bought it again and I replayed through it, and you know what? It sucked more balls than Riley rated a gangbang, and this is not me talking shit about sex workers. I support their personal choices. I just think that it's an apt description of how dog shit the game is. I am convinced that people only like Ocarina of Time because they are blinded by their fucking nostalgia. Feeling like your own really sucks, and feeling like nobody on the planet shares your opinion feels very lonely, but eventually I got lucky enough to find this. Egoraptor's Zelda Sequelitis. This was my first real introduction into Aaron as a creator, other than one video that I had seen that wasn't actually made by him, but is about him. But finally, somebody else shared my opinion that this game was not nearly as good as everyone acted like it was, and the best part was that he could actually articulate his points way better than I could. I mean, look at this. I know it's a 2-point difference, but how is this even possible? How are they anywhere even close to each other? I'm not saying Breath of the Wild's a perfect game, but Jesus Christ. If I had to rate them, it would look more like this. But bae, isn't the fact that you hate Ocarina of Time this much just proof that it's probably just your negative nostalgia, and in retrospect, it isn't that bad? How about you shut the fuck up and stop using my words against me, Mom? I can recognize my own nostalgia, okay? I like Donkey Kong 64, but I can tell you that this score is way too fucking high. Not that these scores actually mean anything anyways. My point is that a nostalgia bias isn't inherently a bad thing. We're allowed to let our love of something from childhood be a reason that we adore it, but we need to be able to look at it objectively and realize that sometimes something you cherish has way too much fucking backtracking.